Christ has purified us in a way that our obedience cannot. Verse 23, these have indeed an appearance of wisdom in promoting self-made religion and asceticism and severity of the body, but they are of no value in stopping the indulgence of the flesh. These regulations, they only appear wise. They are not wise. They only have an appearance of wisdom because it looks at something in the world and says, look how people abuse it. Let's regulate it. Let's keep ourselves from it. And as I thought about what are the things that we so easily regulate, well, they're actually things that have been over-regulated throughout all of Christian history. There are two particular things that God has given us for our good that always tend to be over-regulated. The first is relationship. Our relationships with one another, friendships. God has created us to enjoy friendship and fellowship with other people. For some reason, Christians have often seen relationships as burdensome. A notable example that everyone likes to cite is Simeon Stylites. He is the monk who, he was in the monastery, he was trying to pursue God, and a monk was someone who wanted to be able to be in a quiet place with a regular lifestyle so that he could contemplate the things of God on a regular basis. Well, Simeon was a very popular monk, and so people constantly came to his door, knocking on it, asking for advice, asking for wisdom, asking for prayer. Well, Simeon got sick of all the disturbance from his pursuit of God, and so he went out into the desert, and people still followed him there, and so then he built a pillar. People still kept talking to him. He couldn't remove himself far enough from all these people. And so he continued to get a higher and higher pillar until eventually he was on a pillar tens of feet high, living. People would bring him food and water to take it up there, but that was his way of removing himself from all people because they were a burden. Now, I have an appreciation for a monastic life in the sense that my primary studies were in Augustine and Gregory and Basil, and they were all monks. But to contrast them with Simeon, Augustine, we can just take him. He was pursuing a lifestyle of a monk. He was pursuing a lifestyle where he was going to be in a cave and he was going to be alone with his Bible and prayer and thinking about God and enjoying Him and delighting Him without all the problems of people. And then God changed his heart. God called him to a church. God called him to be a pastor. And we are very blessed in that because he recognized that God did not intend for him to live alone in a cave. God intended for him to live with other people. He stopped seeing people as a burden. He began to see people as a way of loving God. He began to see our relationships as a way that we're supposed to be glorifying God. Too often, we can think of people as being in our way. People don't want to be part of a church because other people slow them down. You think Christians who you're supposed to partner with, they're not going to be able to run the race as fast as you. Or they constantly have problems that you then have to deal with. The truth is we're all sinners and we all have multiple problems that we're not even aware of, and we need one another to be working in our lives to help us with them. See, God called us out of the darkness not just to be blessed. God called us out of the darkness to be a blessing. God called Abraham out of paganism to be a blessing to the world. We're not supposed to just take God's blessings. We're supposed to be agents of God's blessing. That means we help other Christians in their pursuit of the gospel, in their pursuit of the love of Christ, and we pursue the world with the gospel. The second thing created by God for our good is intimacy. It's the most abused gift in the world, and it's the most over-regulated in church history. The goodness of intimacy is clearly seen by the very fact that it is how we procreate. God gave us intimacy between a man and a woman for the purpose of procreating, for the purpose of actually participating in His creative power and process. There have actually been numerous cults that have seen intimacy as necessarily evil. Well, these cults don't last more than a couple of generations for obvious reasons. The problem with many Christians, they look out into the world. They see the abundant abuse of God's good gift. We overreact. We overregulate. We become overly negative about it. God has created us to have and share a unique partnership, a man with a woman, and to have that partnership built upon an intimate relationship. The Song of Solomon, yes, it points to Christ, but the Song of Solomon is in our scriptures to teach us the importance of intimacy. It is good. We must be aware and be cautious of how our constantly cautioning our children, constantly cautioning our minds to the great perversions in the world, how it can cause us to then have a negative view. Finally, regulations cannot purify us. The main Paul is pointing out here is that dying with Christ is how you're purified. It's the circumcision of Christ in your heart that changes you. External circumcision does nothing for you. It's not the food laws that purify you. It's your heart being purified by the Spirit through the blood of Christ. See, our problem isn't just a behavior problem. We don't need behavior training. We don't need to learn new behaviors. The problem is our heart. Our problem is our desires. We do what we want to do. Trying to regulate the heart with behavior change accomplishes nothing but frustration and self-righteousness. So the heart is constantly desiring. Someday this week, track all the different things you desire. You wake up, you desire coffee. You desire to get to work. You're driving down the road, you see a nice car, you desire the car. You desire to get to work on time. You desire for your boss to quit bothering you. How many different desires do you have throughout the day? We are constantly desiring. Changing our behaviors is a way to help the desires from going absolutely corrupt, but it never fixes and changes the desires. Only Christ can do that. This always desiring is why Calvin called the heart an idol factory. We're constantly desiring something. And if we're not desiring God, we're desiring things to replace God. Our desires are dead without Christ. We must be aware of that. Our desires are corrupted by nature, and they need to be disciplined. They need to be purified by Christ, and they need to be disciplined. They need to be healed. And a lot of times that means they need to be starved. But they also need to be fed. Our desires are fixed and changed by constantly feeding it the right thoughts, the right desires, the right truths, and also starving it. Simple obedience cannot fix your indulgences. Like muzzling your mouth, it cannot stop profanity. We cannot think that simply stopping sin is going to fix the heart. But we also can't think that we can fix the heart without stopping the sin. If your desire is always for lusting, you cannot be praying to God, fix my lustful heart, while always looking at pornography. There is a relationship between our desires and our behaviors, but fixing merely our behavior will not fix the heart. We need to seek Christ. We need to seek His forgiveness. We also cannot actively pursue sin and pray for our desires to be changed. The first thing we must do is have our identity fixed firmly and surely in Christ. We need to be constantly reminded of what His death has done for us, how His death has changed us, how His death changes everything. If you have died with Christ, you're a new man. You're a new woman. You're not just a man or woman. You're a son or daughter of God. You have a new identity. You have a new purpose. You have a new authority. You have a new power. If you want your desires to be changed, the first thing we must do is make sure our identity with Christ is clear and firm and strong. And it is by believing in Him, by putting absolute confidence in what He has done, and not what we do. And then, of course, It is hearing His word and asking Him to give us the grace to obey it. We must pray constantly that God will what He desires and then desire what He wills. We must constantly submit to the foot of the cross, expecting Him to heal us and forgive us.